on the chat mode, somebody asked about some issues by nuclear power, and of course they are disappearing. So very good news. And the good thing, we have strong growing. The bad thing, we have less than 3%. So we have to grow much more.
That's true. And I think this is also the key message why we showed the graphs in that order, that we saw basically, or we're seeing now this almost 50% share that we're having for new power capacities. But in total power generation output, solar is very, very small. So let's hope that the coronavirus is not only a threat, but much more than even turns into a chance. We're seeing that. And I think this is, we've also put that or mentioned that in the report, actually, that several countries already have started active measures to support solar. I think a very nice example is Japan, which is in general struggling in the energy transition, but they, for example, recently passed $1 billion as part of their economic stimulus fund to support PPA-based system for renewable corporate power sourcing.
So also surprising was Vietnam. We make around 1 gigawatt with the Siemens inverters. And it's very good, rising. And I see in your numbers, we have a good market share.
Yes, that's true. Okay, thanks. Are there any other questions, participants?
Actually, we have a question that came up in the Q&A in the other session, and it was about, if I recall, the what happens to PV system, I assume rooftop PV system at the end of feed-in tariff, so after 15-20 years, which we did not really address in the conversation. So maybe we can have a few words about it. I don't know if you want to address it.
No, please go ahead.
Yeah, from my side, I think this is a very interesting question indeed, and in my view, the guinea pig in this context would be Germany, because it's been the first country implementing feed-in tariff since the 2000s. And so this is the year in which the first PV system installed will phase out their feed-in tariffs. And so it's on the one hand, yes, the feed-in tariff will be over, so there will be fewer remuneration for the system owners. But on the other hand, by now the system totally paid back. And you can also consider that the system will continue its lifetime. So we expect a lifetime of 20, 30, perhaps more, difficult to tell right now, years of operation. And so right now, anything that is produced is in practice free electricity. But an interesting dynamic is that running out of feed-in tariff incentives probably will spur the market for residential storage system, which is something that we're already seeing, and we expect to kick in strongly after 2020, 2021. So in the moment in which the first feed-in tariffs expire, then there will be probably a stronger economic reason to install a storage system together with a residential or rooftop system, which is something that is already taking place quite a stronger pace in Germany, at least, and popping up in various countries, at least in the EU.
Okay, there's also a question regarding the size and spread of installation sizes. I can take that. So what we're seeing is obviously that the dominating segment is still utility scale solar systems. All the large market are dominated by that segment. So that's China, that's India, that's the US, and that's many other markets. What's interesting is that even in countries that in new markets, we're seeing that. So that Spain, the comeback is based on utility scale solar. Vietnam is absolutely dominated by utility scale solar. Ukraine, which was also new on the list, is also dominated by utility scale solar, even though both Spain and Ukraine also have some rooftop parts. But even in Germany, I think, and that's interesting, is which has been traditionally more a rooftop market, where commercial systems have been big. We're also seeing a trend, as much as it is possible, towards bigger systems, which is supported by PPA-based systems. So the first systems outside the Feedin Tariff scheme were installed last year. This year, the 175 megawatt system from EnBW is expected to come online, which is one of the biggest in Germany, and we're having several more under development. So there is for sure a big trend towards utility scale. On the other hand, we're also seeing growth in the residential field, driven by this whole prosumer idea, which is also being supported in particular by the European Commission, but also by several governments, and obviously is also in the interest of people, simply because producing solar often is so much cheaper. So we're for quite a while at socket parity, so the returns are there, that this will continue. And I think also we have to take a look at that field. It's obviously also more lucrative for businesses to be in that field. The margins are higher, and it will be driven also by new schemes, not that complement basically the liberal approach, and that's a different one, and which is probably spearheaded by California, which as of this year has made it obligatory to put solar systems on rooftops. We will see more of that. There's also the renovation package in Europe, which will address the rooftop segment. But we're also seeing somewhat already followers in California. What I found interesting, Germany's smallest state, the city-state of Bremen, has last week also passed that on all newly built homes, solar has to be included, and that's not only for private, but that's also for public homes. So while the focus for sure is utility scale solar to dominate, but we're also seeing a lot of interest and push in rooftops, also with batteries, obviously. Raffaele, we want to talk on policy a bit, so that there are no questions. Maybe you want to say something on what we see in Europe, actually, also. What's the hot topics there?
Yeah, we have a question, actually. So it's a question about the NECPs.
Yeah, maybe explain also what NECPs are, because
yeah, so it's referring to the National Energy and Climate Plans, which are EU, member states plans in terms of climate and energy policies that have to be redacted by each member state, making a trajectory and a plan towards 2030. And now we are in the stage of gathering all these climate plans. I think only one is missing right now, and they will be reviewed jointly by the Commission in order to assess whether the individual member states' contribution is enough to is in line with the 2030 objectives, and in case they need to be revised. So the question here specifically is about Italy and a growth for the rooftop market versus utility scale after, well, in light of COVID. So what we are doing at SolarPower Europe is to make an assessment of all NECPs from member states with regard to solar and the features that are within this within these plans. So not only about solar targets, but as well, for instance, the framework when it comes to tenders, the administrative procedures, the flexibility, how it is addressed, because it's provisions that are quite important, even if indirectly for solar. This assessment will be published shortly on our platform. What we can say is that from the preliminary assessment from the Italian NECP, we can say that is a pretty good one. It ticks quite many boxes, and it's quite ambitious as well when it comes to solar target. So it contains a lot of information, and it has quite good provisions when it comes to the development of flexibilities and new balancing markets, for instance, for the setting of auctions, for administrative procedures, I think there's even one of the few markets that has the few NECPs that have provision when it comes to PPAs. Now it's difficult to anticipate what the Commission will do once this assessment is carried out, but we are monitoring the developments on this regard, and we will certainly exchange with the Commission to understand what the joint efforts from individual member states mean at the block level.
Further questions? What we've actually done, so I didn't mention it in the presentation, but when you download the report, you might want to look into that, is the technology trends part. So it's a little bit different from the rest of the whole report. And here we list what's going on in terms of technology developments that we're seeing, and these are all developments that are close already in the market or have just entered the market, and it's pretty impressive to look at that because many people might think solar module still looks like it looked many years ago. But in fact, a lot has been happening, and there are several trends that we are at the moment seeing there, especially on the module level. So we're seeing a trend to bigger wafers, and it's really not clear what the format will look like. We're seeing a trend to much bigger modules. There's a new class for the utility scale market, 500 watt plus market, that were recently introduced by the leading solar module manufacturers. There are really also new cells being increasingly used, while in the past in the last few years it was sort of the PERC years, where PERC solar cells became a new standard. Now that has happened, many companies are looking into the next technology. Will it be TOPCon? Will it be heterojunction? There's a lot of things going on, and it's interesting to look at that field, because there's obviously one reason the prices in these bids are going down. The companies in the end have to be profitable, and so that means if prices go down, they have to improve on cost, and that is happening, and it's happening on various fronts. That's pretty interesting times, I think.
And it's interesting also to look at system applications, so not just at module or individual components, but also the applications such as agri-PV or floating solar, right?
True, genau. Yeah, true. That's right. It's not only at the panel level or the individual components. Whatever you look at, if you look at inverters, if you look at mounting systems, but it's really the entire system. And the question from Gada here also is on technology forecast for solar panels. Honestly, it is really, really difficult to say at the moment because if you and I think the biggest topic at the moment are wafer sizes. So it was not long ago that we were at an M0 format, and so that means it was 156 by 156 millimeters, and in really just very, very short time, that has changed, and wafer manufacturers have come out with so many different sizes that it remains to be seen what will dominate there. And we're seeing now even so-called M12, so that means 210 millimeter wafers as the base for cells and modules. Here, really, the question is also if how many companies will embrace that. Time can only tell, and the same thing is true if you look at cell technologies. Most of the bigger companies are looking into all the high efficiency cell technologies. Some have these preferences, others have these preferences, and also here time will only tell. The good thing is actually, and that's what developers and in the end also end users will profit from. We see lower costs for the products, we see lower prices for the products, and we get higher efficiencies which in the end actually also results in over lower solar power costs. So still a dynamic field.
So as said, if someone wants to pose a question, you also feel free to put on your mic and camera, and we can address the question together.
So if there are no upcoming questions, then we can discuss a little bit for the last issue. As you mentioned, when the Feedin Tariff after 20 years is gone and my private modules are working, I expect they can run much longer time. And it depends on the local situation what happens next. If they can feed in, or if you have to use the current in your house, what's depending on the situation. And today we are looking for leaving the border of 52 gigawatts in Germany. We hope they will skip this week. And it depends on the situation, what happens the next half year. What's about storage systems? You see my private inverter. It's also the system on the rooftop is 20 years old and will run out of the Feedin Tariff. And the question is, should I add a battery storage system? Should I have a cut of feed-in? So everything is possible.
Yeah, I think it's a good point. So when I was doing the research for the report and I was reading about Japan, I was quite impressed that how many systems in Japan actually already have gotten out of their feed-in scheme. So Japan started a bit earlier than we, of course, with their rooftop program, but with feed-in tariffs later, but they only have 10-year feed-in tariffs. And so a considerable amount is out. And the interesting thing is, what I just read is that a lot of companies are actually at the moment also getting into that field. We need obviously to have the policy framework to enable new business models, that we can get aggregators to help selling maybe electricity on the wholesale markets. What I think almost anything is possible. The question is how the regulatory framework will look like. If it goes the way the RED 2, the last clean energy package has shown, a lot should be possible, but we still have to wait for, in Europe, for at least for the national member states to put things into practice. So that means that's, for example, why one of our policy asks is in Europe or in Brussels, that we really want to have a coordination point which really checks how the clean energy package provisions are being implemented, so that in such occasions, investors are not having to deal with obstacles they individually cannot handle, and others maybe have an interest not to solve because they profit from that.
Yeah. As I know, we have 200,000 storage system in Germany. I have also one, and the second is waiting for the new regulatories. What's happened? If I can use this, or if I have to skip my produced energy, everything is hanging on the feed-in tariff. What happened next?
Sure, and you're right. Actually, as you see, so I think a solar system's lifetime is not over after 20 years, and I believe that these 40-year warranty, this 30-year warranties that were the production warranties that we're seeing has some fundamental backing and scientific backing. Otherwise, module manufacturers would not do that. And we're seeing that now, not only for glass modules, but also for glass backsheet modules. So I think I also did recently some research, and that at an NREL website, I saw that they were saying actually 40 years are possible. So if you only get a feed-in tariff for 20 years, then it would be a shame actually if the other 20 years would go to waste. I think that's really something we also have to work as associations around the world.
Hi.
Some of my old systems are 27 years in operation, and the last years with higher irradiation, they have the same output as 20 years before. So I expect, as you saw, more than 30 years, of course. And some of them have some tests internal, which shows 25 years warranty when we start in 1979. And these modules have in real lifetime now more than 40 years, because 20 years outside and the test was done for more than 40 years. And of course, around about 90% of efficiency at their modules. So with new models, of course, it should be also in this range, 30 years plus.
Yeah.
I'm just interrupting you shortly. Sorry. The next session is on. I put the link in the chat, and your colleagues are kindly letting you know that you could switch now. So you can finish your question, but then you can follow my link, and I'll see you later. Bye.
Okay, see you.
Thank you.
Okay,
thank you.
Bye.
Okay, thanks, Bodo.
I think we are just finished.
Okay, yeah. So shall
See you
we
later.
take the one from Zolt still, or Raffaele, or?
Sure, we
take a look,
we can discuss quickly the top 3 European solar markets. So as said, well, we're looking at EU is different from the European as a whole picture, because then importantly there is the case of Ukraine. But then if you look at EU, we have indeed we have Spain, which has been a surprisingly large market in 2019. Well, not so surprisingly, in fact, since most of the capacity has been the result of the auction back in 2017, which mandated system to be completed or grid connected by the end of 2019 in order to be eligible for the feed-in tariff. And as such, it's been very positive to see that most of the capacity that had been auctioned, so actually more than 95%, has been actually grid connected, despite some delays that created some concerns between at national level in Spain. But yes, fortunately, most of the capacity has been installed. So indeed, the utility scale has taken the lion's share of the Spanish market. However, since the removal of the sun tax, the so-called sun tax in 2018, there's been also quite a strong development of the rooftop segment, which had about 400, 500 megawatts installed in 2019, and seems to be constantly growing now. Of course, in light of COVID-19, there has been a drop in the rooftop segment, especially in Spain, which has been one of the countries that has been hit the hardest by the crisis, and problems related to things such as conducting business, but especially for the rooftop segment. So on the one hand, the salesmen had issues in conducting their own business, but from the demand side, there's been a slump in requests, because people clearly had their priorities at the household level, but also at the CNI level. Businesses were struggling financially, and so that created some problems. However, what UNEF, the Spanish PV Association, expects is a rather stable utility scale segment that stands at 2.5 to 3 gigawatt installed per year, provided that some issues when it comes to land access and permitting are addressed. But the pipeline in Spain is huge, so there is a lot of interest to develop new plants, even subsidies-free plants, and there's been some examples already of fairly large plants for the European context. So our overall outlook for Spain is a rather stable and fairly large market that continues consistently to install new PV capacity. And this is in line with the Spanish NECP, which has a pretty strong targets for development for 2030, and the target for 100% renewables that the Spanish government set out in 2018. And then maybe a few words about Germany as well. And then Michael, I don't know if you want to take Ukraine and say a few words later. So yeah, from my side,
yeah, I think let's do Germany and then take the rest off the record, because I think we should.
Yes, indeed. So about Germany, it's been a quite strong market growth. So we had 2.9 gigas last year, in 2018, and compared to 3.9 in 2019. So absolute 1 gigawatt more than the year before. There's been a lot of uncertainties when it comes to this solar cap of 52 gigas, whether it will be removed or not. So that creates quite some uncertainty, especially at the CNI segment. And so that definitely had an impact in the first 3 months of the year, and then Corona kicked in. Now, it's important also to notice that Germany has been one of the least impacted countries in Europe when it comes to lockdown, because there were fewer limitations than in other countries such as Italy and Spain or France. However, the CNI segment has been impacted by the two of them, so a combination of the two. Now the solar cap seems to be removed, because there's been an announcement by the German administration. However, this has not been carried out quite yet, so their announcement is there, but we're really running out of time, because the 52 gigawatt cap is set to be reached within weeks. So the government should really speed up this legislative process and remove the cap in order to allow the feed-in tariffs to continue afterwards. But overall, our outlook for Germany is quite positive. We expect 6 to 7 gigawatts in the coming years annually. So overall, a quite strong increase and contribution to the overall EU gigawatt deployment.
Okay, cool. Okay, thank you to everyone for staying with us. Thanks a lot. And so let's go back into the conference room.
Thanks.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.